Okay, we'll start in 30 seconds. And here are the class notes for today. Okay. All right, we're ready to roll. All right, welcome back, everyone. I want to talk for a few moments at the outset about the midterm. The midterm will be in class on Wednesday. One second, I want to just set a reminder to my secretary to get this ready. Okay. All right, so the midterm is in class on Wednesday. The midterm is designed to be 90 minutes. Our class is only an hour and 15 minutes. So I'd ask you, I'm sorry, to start at 8:45. If that presents a burden for anyone, let me know. I can work something out, but this is for your benefit, not mine. I want to make sure you take it under the normal circumstances for testing, and you're going to be rushed enough, so there's no reason to try and squeeze an hour and 30-minute exam into an hour and 15 minutes. You should now all have access to exam numbers. I think the registrar sent out an email, but under Stanley, you can get your special midterm exam number. Please use the midterm number and not the final number. I don't want to know your final number. It's better that I don't have it. So we'll start at 8:45. There will not be any Zoom. I'm not going to proctor it. I'm not going to use the remote, spying software. I'm not interested in that stuff. I don't know if I have to use it for the final. My preference is not to. I think there are problems with it, which I don't like. In the honor system, this is an ungraded midterm, so cheating would be very stupid. I can't imagine why you would want to cheat, but people do dumb things all the time. Exams completely open book. Use whatever you want. It will not help you. It really won't. Try to have your outline printed out on paper. I know that's a burden this year because you don't have access to the school printers. I don't know if I can relax the policy and having virtual outlines for the final, but at least for now, try to have your outline printed, and we can maybe talk about it later. There are problems with having your iPad out during the exam. It's too much of a temptation to look elsewhere. Okay. This will be one of my old exams. I won't tell you which one. If you want to be, bold, you can just look at all of them and understand them all. But don't think you can just walk in here and copy from the model answer. It won't be very useful. Try to take it based on your own notes without cheating, and try and take it for real. Again, I will not be proctoring it, so I'll just expect you to start at 8:45 on Wednesday and finish at 9:15. I won't say anything to you. I won't do anything because I don't want to have the Zoom on. I want you to be able to focus on your exam. I think I got everything. I'm sure I didn't. Allison, what did I forget?
You have to check in on my clicker.
Oh, that's a good question. No, I don't think it's necessary. I think you're maybe you should. I think if you submit your exam, that's enough evidence of your attendance. So I don't want to have you. I don't want to make you worry about one more thing. So I'm going to say no. But thank you for asking. Yeah, no, it's actually a really good question. Just if you submit your exam, that'll be proof you were present. I don't need you to focus on one more thing. Okay, thanks, Allison. Anything else that I need to talk about? You all had me or I think not all, but almost all of you had me, so you know my general style for the exam. But there are going to be 5 questions for the midterm, 1,000 words limit. Please do not go over the word limit. Please do a word count. It's in the software. Do not do the character count. Do the word count. And there are instructions online of how to do the word count. One second. Let me just tell you because people always get this wrong. Every year this happens. One student writes 1,000 characters. And just so you know, 1,000 characters is basically like 3 or 4 text messages. It's very short. There's a tools feature in exam software. You have to click word count. It will show you the character count by default, but you need to use the word count feature. Okay, and if you can't figure it out, do a manual word count. Okay. What else? What else? Okay. I like to do a series of questions now. There's going to be a lot of them. Because I want to review the topic of easements. And I'd like to move into the topic of covenants. I can do this in one class, but it's going to be very tight. All right. So let's try question number 1 first. And then we'll go straight through the list. These are multiple choice. So question number 1. At common law, an easement in gross was assignable. True or false? At common law, an easement in gross was assignable. Okay. And who's next? Please raise your hand. I know you're here. That's you, Harrison? Okay. Another 5 more seconds. All right, Harrison. I'll stop right there. Harrison, what is an easement in gross? Just get a terminology straight.
Easement in gross is a benefit to the easement holder, and that it benefits the person individually and follows them.
Okay, good. So it's an easement in gross. The easement benefits a specific named person. It doesn't follow the owner of the land. It follows a person, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what does assignable mean, Harrison? What does that mean, assignable?
Assignable means you can give it away.
Yeah, you can convey it, you can sell it, you can bequeath it as you will, right? You can give it away. So at common law, could you assign an easement in gross?
Yes, you could.
Okay, that's correct. Wow, look at this one. 50-50, 49-51. This one's right down the middle. Oh boy. Not terribly good. This was the one stock rule case, right? This was the Pocono Spring case. This issue, number 1, was not in dispute. Even at common law, the courts agreed that you could assign or convey an easement. The issue in the Pocono Springs case was actually number 2. So look at question number 2. At common law, an easement in gross could be divided, or you might say it might be divisible. You see it both ways: divided, divisible. It means the same thing. You'll find in this class there are different ways of saying the same thing, many ways. Okay, and Alexandria, I'll call on you about 10 seconds. Okay. Alexandria, what's your answer here?
Yes, I said false.
Okay, why'd you say false?
Because I went back to Miller v. Lutheran with the
Good.
one stock rule.
Good.
That they held that the easement in gross couldn't be divided.
How do you have to convey the easement in gross, Alexandria?
It had to be conveyed with the agreement of both people who had acquired it jointly.
Exactly. Okay. Very good. Thank you, Alexandria. So this is Miller, right? The answer here is false. At common law, there's something called the one stock rule, which meant if 2 people acquired an easement jointly, they both had to exercise power over it. Think of the example of a submarine, right? You both have to turn your keys, right? This is a case where both parties have to agree of how the easement should be used. If they both agree to sell it, that's fine, right? If they both agree to give it to some third party, that's fine. But they have to concur, right? You could not chop it up unilaterally. right? You had to both agree. You couldn't divide it. They both had to concur of how to use it. All right. Now, let's try, oops, oh, my question numbering was off. I jumped from 2 to 4. Let me just fix this. Don't go lose their minds. 6, 7, okay. I have a lot of questions. I just want to keep the ordering straight. Okay. Okay, so your next question is what is now actually question number 3. Under the modern approach, right, courts today, is an easement in gross divisible, can be divided. Okay. And it's going to be Nick in about 10 seconds. I feel like a game show host with these like questions and these timers. But this is Zoom world. All right, Nick, you want to take a stab at question number 3, please?
Yes, so I put true.
Okay, tell me why.
Because what you look at is the restatement, which basically says that it can be divided unless contrary to the intent of the parties that created the easement.
Very good.
Or if it unnecessarily increases the burden of the Serbian estate.
Okay, that's really good. So the answer here is true, and actually 96% of you got this right. Very good. The one stock rule has been abandoned by the modern courts. The restatement third, as it were, has abandoned the one stock rule. So now, if two parties acquire an easement jointly, they can chop it up and convey it separately. Now, just be clear, they convey their own interest, right? They can't convey the entire easement. But in this case, I think it was, just say it's 75-25, right? Rufus, the younger brother, could convey 25% of his easement without the permission of the older brother. I think his name was Frank. Nick, your hands up also?
Yeah, just on questions 1 and 2. I did have a couple questions on those. So for the first one, it says that common law and easement and gross was assignable.
Yeah.
And I think what was kind of confusing about that one is English common law doesn't recognize.
Oh, I mean American common law. I'm not talking about English common law.
Okay.
You know, it's a really good question. In the topic of easements and covenants is one of the few places where English and American law differ for your purposes. Usually I don't have to distinguish them. But the topics of easements in the United States and in England, the law is different. And in the topic of covenants, you'll see a huge difference between easements and covenants. And I'll draw that distinction later. So just assume for this class, when I say common law, I mean American common law.
Okay. And then for question 2, a common law and easement and gross could be divided.
You might by one party. Would that make it better?
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to just clarify. Divisible refers to one party.
That's
unilaterally trying to.
That's what I meant. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Because if both parties, just like if you had 2 parties, they agreed to then sell it to 3 different people, they could do that as long as they agreed. Right?
Correct.
Technically, okay. That's all I wanted to do.
Yeah. No, it's a fair point. Okay. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. All right. So we've done questions 1, 2, and 3. Let's do question 4. Okay. Okay. Actually, put choices. Yes. No. Let's say you do it this one. Okay, this is question number 4. Oops. At common law, could you assign an easement appurtenant? At common law, could you assign an easement appurtenant? And Madison will be up in about 10 seconds. Ooh, this is giving people some difficulty. All right, Madison, you here? I cannot hear you, but I think you're... There you are.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, loud and clear. All right, Madison, so just refresh your recollection, please. What is an easement appurtenant?
So the easement appurtenant is when the benefit follows the land.
Okay, good. So an easement appurtenant is an easement where the benefit follows the land. Is there a dominant estate with an easement appurtenant?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a servient estate?
Yes.
Okay, which is which? Which is dominant estate and which is servient estate?
Oh gosh.
What's the meaning of dominant and what's the meaning of servient?
Let me see. Okay, so the is okay. So the
What do you think servient means? Just look at the word servient. What does that word sound like?
I would think it sounds like kind of like lesser, like the second.
Okay, so in an easement appurtenant, what does a servient estate do and what does a dominant estate do?
So I would say that the dominant estate would have is the land that benefits.
Okay, good. So the dominant estate is the land that benefits from the easement. What would the servient estate?
Would be
If one's providing the benefit, what's the other doing?
giving the benefit.
And what do you call when a piece of land is giving a benefit? How would we describe that? Well, if you have to let someone onto your land, you have to, keep your land for residential purposes. How would we describe that land? You have on one side the benefit. What's on the other side?
I'm not sure.
No, in common English, right? If one side is getting the benefit, what's the other side getting? Or giving, I should say.
Giving.
From our discussion today and our reading today, we have that diagram. On one side, you have the benefit burden. And what do you have on the other side?
So benefits.
Okay, so let's try this again. Which is a dominant estate and which is a servient estate? Which is which? I'm dwelling on this point because it's very important for today's lecture.
So
which one's benefits and which one is burdened?
Okay, so I would say the dominant estate benefit.
Good.
And the servient estate burden.
Perfect. Okay, very good. All right, I'll let you go. You're good for now. That's very good. Very good. Say, Mackenzie, are you up here?
Yeah.
Okay, Mackenzie. So let's go back to the question I asked a minute ago. Right? We have the dominant estate and with the servient estate with an easement appurtenant.
Mm-hmm.
With an easement appurtenant, we know the dominant estate receives the benefit. Right? What happens if I sell the easement appurtenant to someone else? What happens then? Well, if I sell this dominant estate to a third party.
The dominant estate will then they would still benefit from the easement because it's attached to the land.
Do you have to do anything special for future buyers to benefit from the easement appurtenant?
No.
No. It's kind of automatic, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So just thank you, Mackenzie. Okay, so let me just talk for a minute, then I'll come back to Samantha in a second. With an easement appurtenant, the benefits and burdens flow automatically, right? If I purchase the dominant estate, I benefit from the easement. If Mackenzie purchases the Servient estate, she'll be burdened by the easement, right? You're going to miss easement appurtenants. They are so simple, right? We say that the benefits and the burdens run with the land. It's a very funny expression, run with the land. What it means is that the benefit or the burden is basically stuck to the property, right? Blackacre is always going to be burdened. Whiteacre is always going to be benefited. No matter who steps onto Blackacre or Whiteacre, they will either be benefited or burdened. That the benefit and burden run with the land. Okay? But then we come back to question number 4, which asks, at common law, could you assign an easement appurtenant? So Samantha, you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so Samantha, let's say you have a piece of property, right? Let's say you own the Servient tenement. Can you sell the Servient tenement? Is there any problem with that?
I would say no.
No? Or let's say you own the dominant tenement. Can you sell the dominant tenement to someone else?
Yes.
Okay. And when you sell those, either the dominant or the Servient tenement, does the easement follow the land wherever it goes? Does it run with the land?
Yes.
Okay. But can you sell the easement appurtenant? Can you assign the easement appurtenant separate from the dominant estate or separate from the Servient estate? Can you just assign the easement appurtenant to someone else?
No, because the easement is attached to the land.
That's right. So is this true or false here?
For
Number 4.
sorry, I put true.
Wait a minute. What did you just say a second ago?
It's false. I don't know.
Well, which one is it?
it
Which one is it? You're allowed to change your mind. Which one is it?
would be false.
Why is it false?
Because an easement is attached to the land, so you can't just sell the easement. You would have to sell the easement and the land.
Yet you sell the land with easement on it. Just to be very precise.
Yeah.
Okay, that's right. Right. You have to sell the dominant or Servient estate separately. Okay, so the answer is false, right? And this one was a little bit close, but I think this is a hard question, actually. So to be very careful here, right? Thank you, Samantha. You can assign an easement in gross, right? If you're the beneficiary, right? Because it's a personal benefit that one person has. Both an easement appurtenant, the benefit and the burden are stuck to the land. And you cannot separate the burden from the land. And you cannot separate the benefit from the land. Right? What I'm trying to convey here is that the burden and the benefit are stuck. They run with the land and they can't be separated from the land. So Blackacre will always be burdened no matter what. And Whiteacre will always be benefited no matter what. You can't separate those two. All right. So you see, it's starting to make sense of pattern, right, of how these things develop. The rules are very different for easements in gross and easements appurtenant, which is why the terminology really matters. Okay, questions so far? Okay. Let's take a look at question number 5. Okay, question number 5. A owns Blackacre. B owns Whiteacre. B sells A an easement that allows A to cross Whiteacre. And the question is this: at common law, A and B are in privity of contract. That's your question. This will be for Alexa in about 10 seconds. Okay, Alexa, what's your answer here?
I put true.
Okay, tell me why.
Because they had a contract to sell the easement.
Okay. Okay, so what does privy of contract mean? Just it sounds obvious, but what does that phrase mean?
Well, they had a contract. Like one person offered something and the other person accepted it.
Yeah. This is straight up privy of contract, right? Is this enforceable between A and B? That is, if B builds a factory, can A sue on this contract for breach?
Yeah.
For damages? Yeah. Okay, very good. Straightforward, okay? All right, everyone. Now try question number 6. So it's the same fact pattern. Same fact pattern, but I'm asking a different question. Are they in privity of estate, common law? And I want you here to think about whether there's a difference between privy of estate and privy of contract. They're not the same thing, and actually it makes a huge difference in today's lecture, how to distinguish these two concepts. Okay, and this will be for Ashley in about 10 seconds. All right, Ashley, here? Ashley going once. All right. Monique, you here?
Yes.
All right, Monique, your question. Is this true or false? Actually, first, before you get me true or false, sorry. What is privity of estate?
It's usually a relationship that occurs through a land transfer.
Oh. What do you mean a relationship that occurs through a land transfer? You're right, but just I want you to be a little more precise.
Like a relationship between a transferor and a transferee.
Ooh, very good. Okay, so in this question, Monique, are A and B in a transferor, transferee, or maybe grantor, grantee relationship?
No.
No, why not?
Because I think they just A gave B an easement.
Good.
There was no like land transfer.
Right. A owned Blackacre, B owned Whiteacre, right? They didn't convey an easement in this process, right? So Monique, is this easement enforceable between A and B?
Is the easement enforceable? Probably.
That's not an answer. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Do you need privity of estate to have an enforceable easement between A and B?
No.
Okay, that's correct. All right. So the answer to number 6 is false, right? Hold on. Wait a minute. Did you say true or false? I can't remember. You said false, right? Yeah. Okay. The answer number 6 is false. They are not in privity of estate. And the reason why they're not in privity of estate is that they simply conveyed the easement as a separate transaction. At common law, in order to have privity of estate, you needed to create the easement as part of a conveyance. And let me make this more precise. You needed to create the easement when the servient estate was being conveyed. I'll say that one more time. At common law, for there to be privity of estate, you needed to create the easement in a conveyance for the servient estate. So in this question, a Whiteacre is servient, right? You can cross over Whiteacre. In order for this easement to have worked at common law, for there to be a privity of estate, you would have to convey Whiteacre with the covenant attached to Whiteacre, right? You might say you reserve a covenant for Whiteacre, right? You're saying, I'm going to sell you Whiteacre, but I'm going to take a stick from your bundle. I'm going to reserve this covenant. I'm going to put a covenant on it. Right? This was very important because at common law, unless you had privity of estate, you couldn't form a real covenant. We'll get there later. By the way, this is again for Nick's question. This is American common law. American common law. I'm not talking about England right now. We'll talk about England later. Okay. Now, I want you to take a look at, there's a diagram. I'm going to share my screen just for a moment. This is a diagram that is in your book, but I want you just to make an alteration to it. I think it's on page, what is it, 835? I'm sorry, it's the top of 836. So everyone see this diagram, top of 836 in your book? All right, I want you to start thinking about this diagram. I made a slightly different version of it, but that's a diagram in your book. If you go to the, one second. I put the, what do you call it? The case summaries. I created a case summary about the topic for today, which is for servitudes or covenants. But I want you to look at this version of the diagram. I think it's a little bit neater. Okay? Everyone see this? All right. So we have this first row with Amy and Bob, which is A and B. I think it's easier to say Amy and Bob than A and B, but whatever you find easier. And this is an instance where we have privity of estate. That is, Amy owned Whiteacre, and then Amy also owned Blackacre. But Amy sold Blackacre to Bob with a covenant attached to it. Bob acquired Blackacre, the burden property, with a covenant attached to it. So now Amy has a dominant estate, and Bob has a burden estate. Right? In this case, there would be privity of estate between Amy and Bob. Right? There's privity of estate between Amy and Bob. Okay? Everyone see this? Now you see how this goes along a straight line? For reasons that are not very important, privity of estate is called horizontal privity. Privity of estate is called horizontal privity. The reason why is so stupid, because for generations, law students drew this diagram, and Amy and Bob were on the same line, and it's horizontal. That's the reason. I wish it was a better reason, but that's it. But in our class, when you see the words privity of estate, you should think of horizontal privity. Okay? It's only because this diagram, there's no actual law. If you open up a statute book, the word horizontal privity is not there. It's not in courts, but you just need to know this. Trust me on this one. Okay? All right, so let's go back to question number, what are we up to? 7. So let's try question number 7, please. This was a little bit longer. A and B, neighboring landowners, decide that they will mutually restrict their lots to single-family residential uses. They signed an agreement wherein each promises on behalf of herself and her heirs and assigns that her lot will only be used for single-family residential purposes. This agreement is recorded in the county courthouse under the name of each signer. Are A and B in horizontal privity? Yes or no? All right, this will be for Adam in about 5 seconds. Okay. Okay, Adam, what's your answer to number 7? You hear Adam? I can't hear you. Adam, it's not working. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll come back to you later. Amir, I'm sorry, not Amir. I'm sorry, Natalie, are you here?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. Very, very nice of you to say. Natalie, remind us. We just said this a minute ago. What does horizontal privity mean?
So horizontal privity is when there's a benefit and a burden. So with A and B, A would be the promisee who has the benefit, and B would have the burden and is the promisor.
Okay. So with horizontal privity, you have a conveyance for the servient estate. And there's one party that's a grantor and one party that's a grantee. In this question, are A and B in horizontal privity?
I put no.
Okay, are you sure?
Yeah.
But again, what is the definition of horizontal privity? You just said it a minute ago. Just say it again.
It's when there's a relationship, a grantor-grantee relationship.
Okay. Is there a grantor-grantee relationship here?
Yes.
Well, what's being granted and what's being conveyed?
They're both agreeing to restrict their lots to single family.
Is any property being conveyed?
No.
Okay, let me ask the question again. Is there a grantor-grantee relationship?
No.
You don't sound certain.
Yeah.
No, I'm not leaving you, right? Are they making a promise?
Yes.
Is any land being conveyed when this promise is being made?
No.
Okay, so is there horizontal privity?
No.
Good. Is there privity of estate?
No.
Is there privity of contract?
Yes.
Ah, okay, very good. So let's just summarize again. Is there privity of contract?
Yes.
Is there privity of estate?
No.
Is there horizontal privity?
No.
Good. Okay, that's right. There's no horizontal privity here. Again, when you see the word horizontal privity, that is the exact same thing as privity of estate. Right? Horizontal privity and privity of estate are the same thing. Okay? Any questions on that? Okay, now let's look at question number 8, which is a continuation of question 7. So it's the same fact pattern, but just it continues. We learn that B sells her lot to C. And C builds an apartment building on the lot. Does the burden run from B to C? And this will be a question for Amir in about 10 seconds. Actually, Adam's back. We'll see if it works for him. Hey, Adam, can you hear us now? No. Adam? No, my friend, your mic's not working today. Try another day. It's all right. Amir, are you here? Amir? No. Presley, you here? Oh boy. Grayson?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, wow, it took 3 people. All right. So Grayson, just help us out for a second, right? What does it mean for the burden to run? What does that phrase mean?
For like the burden to be transferred to like the successors.
Okay. So can A and B burden themselves without horizontal privity?
They can A and B burden themselves, yes. That
Can you burden yourself with just privity of contract? Is that possible?
No, you need privity in the state.
No. To just to burden A and B. Can A and B burden themselves with privity of contract?
Yeah, they can.
Right. It's a simple contract, right?
Yeah.
So in this hypothetical, if B were to build a factory, could A sue B for damages?
Yes.
Okay. But now I change the question. B sells the lot to C. C builds the apartment. Okay? Does the burden run from B to C?
No, because you need horizontal privity for the burden to run.
Ah. How do you know that?
Because it was in the book.
That's a good, smart answer. Okay, fine. That's right. That's always a good answer. It's in the book. All right. The answer here is false. B. And let me explain why. When we are talking about servitudes, right? When we're talking about servitudes, we need to think about, when does a burden run with the land? Okay, when's the burden run with the land? And when we're dealing with covenants, which is our topic for today, in order for a burden to run with the land, you need horizontal privity. Okay? I'm sort of jumping ahead, but it's very important to make this point clear. Okay? It's very important to make this point clear. Horizontal privity, privity of estate, is essential, right? Is essential in order for a covenant to work at common law. If you did not have horizontal privity, right? If you did not have horizontal privity, the covenant doesn't even get started. All right? Let's try the next question. Question number 9. All right. This is a continuation from question number, it should be 8. The numbering is all messed up. I'm sorry. But it's a continuation from the previous one. A builds an apartment house. Can C sue A for damages? All right. I think this one's for Jay. Jay, what do you think the answer is here?
I'm not gonna lie, I went back and forth on this one. I settled on no.
Okay. Why?
I settled on no because the burden didn't run, and therefore the benefit wouldn't run either because there's no vertical privity.
Huh. So you're actually, your answer is wrong. So the answer here is actually A. You can. But you said something that's actually very good. You distinguish between the benefit and the burden. So just talk with that for a minute.
Okay. So if the benefit and neither the benefit nor the burden are going to be running, that means that's because there's no vertical privity here between A and C. So if there's no burden or benefit between them, then C can sue A for damages because A no longer has the benefit of there's no privity.
All right, good. All right, it's if you didn't get these right, it's okay. I haven't fully explained this concept yet, but thank you, Jay. But now I want to actually explain how covenants work. I give you this preview because it helps it further on. I want to go back to this diagram, which again is an 836, but I have a slightly, I think, easier to follow version in the case summaries. So let me share my screen one more time. Okay. This is a diagram that you're going to hate. Generations of law students hate this diagram, and you will soon become one of them. The goal with covenants is to figure out whether the benefit runs with the land and whether the burden runs with the land. And in order to figure those two questions out, we need to think about two kinds of privity. We need to think about horizontal privity, and we need to think about vertical privity. All right? So let's start with horizontal privity. This was our example we had before. I think Natalie had this question. Let's assume that Amy owns Whiteacre and Bob owns Blackacre. And they agree to put covenants on their property. Amy and Bob would be in privity of contract. They made a contract that's perfectly enforceable between the two of them. But that contract has limited value. Why? Because if Amy sells Whiteacre to Diane, like this, or Bob sells Blackacre to Carl, the benefits and burdens will not run. Okay? In order to create a real covenant at law, you need to have privity of estate. Privity of contract is not enough. And how do you create privity of estate? There has to be a transaction. So Amy owns both Whiteacre and Blackacre, and then Amy sells Blackacre to Bob with a covenant attached to it. Let me say this again. To have privity of estate, the promise must be made when the servient estate is conveyed. Again, for privity of estate to exist, you must make the promise with a conveyance of the servient estate. So let's take an easy example. Amy sells Blackacre to Bob with the promise that Blackacre is only used for residential purposes. Right? Amy sells Blackacre to Bob with the promise that Blackacre is only used for residential purposes. In that case, they are in privity of estate. And when you have privity of estate, you have horizontal privity. Okay. So they've now fulfilled the requirement to create a real covenant law. There are two other requirements. I don't care about them now. Don't worry about them now. They'll matter later, right? But the one that really matters is to create the real covenant law, you need horizontal privity of estate. The other two are almost always satisfied, so just don't worry about them now. We'll get to them later. The only one that matters is the third one. Okay? But just because you create a real covenant law doesn't mean the benefit and burdens automatically transfer. Right? You can create a real covenant law, but the burden may not run with the land. This is what always trips up students. If you create a real covenant law, the burden can run. It doesn't have to. So what is the rub? We have Bob, and then we have Carl, right? Bob wants to sell Blackacre to Carl. What does it take for Bob to transfer the burden, to assign the burden to Carl? In order for Bob to transfer or assign the burden to Carl, Bob must convey his entire estate to Carl. Bob has to convey his entire estate to Carl. If Bob has a fee simple, he must give Carl a fee simple. If Bob has a life estate, he must give Carl that life estate, right? In order for the burden to run, Bob needs to convey his entire interest to Carl. When Bob conveys his entire interest to Carl, we have what's called vertical privity. Vertical privity. Why is it called vertical? Because look at the damn diagram. Bob's on top of Carl. That's the reason. There's no good reason why. It's just visual, right? Again, vertical privity is a made-up word. This is not in any statute book. It's not in a case, but it helps explain the privity between the promisor, Bob, and the assignee, Carl. In this case, privity means you convey the entire estate. You see why this gets tricky? The word privity means one thing horizontal, another thing vertical. With horizontal privity, it means grantor-grantee relationship. I feel like I'm making a sign of the cross, right? With vertical privity, right, you're conveying the entire estate. So if Bob has a fee simple and he gives Carl a life estate, the burden does not run. The burden actually stays with Bob. So let me summarize this again. In order for the burden to run, you need two types of privity. For the burden to run, you need both horizontal privity and you need vertical privity. You need both. If you don't have horizontal privity, you're dead. There's no covenant at all. If you have horizontal privity, but you lack vertical privity, you have a real covenant, but the burden does not run. When you look at these questions, you need to ask yourselves, is there horizontal and is there vertical? You have to look at both of these elements. Oops. All right, everyone with me? Questions so far? Yeah, Moises.
I'm just a little confused.
I don't blame you. It's confusing. This is probably the hardest topic the entire semester.
So C can sue A even when there isn't horizontal privity?
I've only done the burden so far. I haven't done the benefit.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, so let's continue. So Moises asked a good question, right? A minute ago, I asked you question number... Oh God, what number was it? It was question number 9. Okay? So I asked you, can Carl, C, sue Amy, right? That Moises, that was the question? Right, okay. So far, I've been talking about the burden running from B to C, right? In this diagram, there's only one burden side and one side that benefits. But in question number, in question number 8 and 9, you have what's called a mutually restrictive covenant, where each side both benefits and burdens, right? What does it mean to mutually restrict? I am limiting my property, and you're limiting your property. A is residential, and B is residential. So here comes the rub. Which is dominant and which is servient? Both. Because A is simultaneously restricting his own property, that's a burden, and benefiting from the restriction of his neighbor. That is, he has a peace and quiet in his neighborhood, but he has to limit his own property. That's often how property law works. You restrict your own property, and in the process, you benefit from your neighbor's restrictions. But that's not terribly important right now. The answer to Moses' question is actually a little bit simpler. So go back to our diagram. The benefit is different, right? In order for the burden to run, you need both horizontal and vertical privity. But for the benefit to run, it's a lot easier. For the benefit to run, you don't need either. You don't need vertical privity, and you don't need horizontal privity. If Bob conveys any interest to Carl, or I'll make it easier to use our diagram, if Amy conveys any interest to Diane, right? If Amy conveys any interest to Diane, Diane benefits from the covenant. Now, if you look at your book on page 830, it was 836. Where is it? I'm sorry. If you look at your book in 836, you'll notice that they label on the left-hand side between A and D as vertical privity. Everyone see that in your book? Take a pen and cross that out, vertical privity. Just please, for your own sake, cross that out. The reason I'm asking you to cross it out is that privity on the left side is different than privity on the right side. Privity on the left side is different than privity on the right side. On the right side, when we say privity, for the burden to run, okay, when we say privity for the burden to run, that's vertical privity, which means that C takes over the entire state of B, right? If B has a fee simple, C has a fee simple. That's what vertical privity means on the burden side. It is very confusing to use the same phrase, vertical privity, on the benefit side. In fact, I would not use that phrase at all. All right? Here, for the benefit to run, all that's required is that D conveys some interest to A. That's it. If A has a fee simple and D gets a life estate, D can reap the benefit of that relationship. All right. Here, let me go back to my diagram because I like it better. Here we go. This is the most screen sharing I'll do all semester, I promise. So again, we have Amy and Bob. And I think, by the way, I think we're doing okay with time, but I think what I'm just going to do is adjourn the three cases for today, Tulk, Neponsit, and Sanborn to class a week from today. And then I think what I'll just do is, we have makeup days, right? Because this is taking longer than I expected, but I think it's time well spent. I think we had I think I built in a makeup class at the end of the semester. So let's just, your midterm's on Wednesday, but let's just do the three cases for today, Tulk, Neponsit, and Sanborn, for a week from today, which is going to be the 12th. And then we'll just move everything up one class. Understand what I'm saying? Right? So I usually don't do this, but this is taking longer than expected. Zoom Law School, but we're fine. All right, so the midterm is on Wednesday, and then we'll do those three cases the following Monday. And I'll update the syllabus later because I don't want you guys to rush this. And don't worry, those three cases will not be in the midterm, so don't feel like you're at disadvantage. Okay, so let's go back to our diagram. Okay, so we have Amy, Bob, Diane, and Carl. Right? Amy, Bob, Diane, and Carl. Oh yeah, Blake says more review questions on Monday. Oh, I'll do my best. Okay. Right. So we ask our questions. We look at this diagram. Amy, Bob, Diana, Carl. I know there are a bunch of questions in the chat. I'll get to them in a minute, I promise. Okay. The first question we ask ourselves, is there privity of estate? Right? That's the first necessary requirement for real covenant. Is there privity of estate? Or is there horizontal privity? These phrases are synonymous. And there's going to be horizontal privity if Amy originally owned both Whiteacre and Blackacre, and Amy conveys Blackacre to Bob with the covenant attached to it. In this hypothetical, Whiteacre has the benefit and Blackacre has the burden. Or maybe we could say it differently, Whiteacre is the dominant estate and Blackacre is the servient estate. You can use those words. It's not, you don't have to, but you can. But what's important is one side has the benefit and one side has the burden. And we can use the fancy labels, right? We say that Bob is the promisor and Amy is the promisee. Why? Bob gives the promise to Amy, right? Amy gives Blackacre to Bob, and in exchange, Bob gives Amy a promise. He says, okay, I will accept Blackacre on this condition that I will only keep it residential. Okay? That creates privity of estate, and that's an essential element of a real covenant at law. You're with me? Okay. Now, let's do the easy side first, right? Let's say Amy has a fee simple, and Amy gives a life estate to Diane. So now Diane's the owner, or the present owner, of Whiteacre for her life. Bob comes along and builds a factory. Can Diane sue Bob for damages? The answer is yes. The benefit runs to Diane even though she doesn't have the full estate, even though she only has a life estate. Let me say this clearly. In order for the benefit to run, you do not need vertical privity, right? In order for the benefit to run, Diane, the assignee, does not need to acquire the entirety of Amy's estate. Diane can acquire something less than the full estate. Okay? Everyone see that, right? The benefit is easy. Right? The benefit's easy. You don't need vertical privity. You don't even need horizontal privity, right? Let's say that A and B lacked horizontal privity. Diane could still sue Bob, right? The benefit was designed to run very simply. So long as Diane is acquiring some interest from Amy, Diane has the benefit. Okay, the benefit side's easy. Okay, Mackenzie, I see your hands up.
So Amy and Diane can both sue Bob, or would it just be Diane?
Well, generally it's the present estate owner. So let's say that Amy has a life. Diane has a life estate. It'd be Diane that's the one that's suing. Technically, if Amy has a remainder, which is what would happen after a life estate finishes, Amy could also bring suit, but it's usually the present estate owner. That's a good question. Did that answer your question, Mackenzie?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, but the benefit side is always easier. Okay. Now, let's do the burden side. This side is much harder. Okay. How do you get the burden from Bob to Carl? You need two things. You first need horizontal privity or privity of estate. That is, Amy sells Blackacre to Bob with a promise. Bob promises, he's a promisor, to restrict the usage of Blackacre. And Bob must convey the entirety of his interest to Carl. That is, Bob has nothing left over. The entire bundle of sticks. Okay? The entire bundle of sticks. If there's horizontal privity, that's privity of estate, and there's vertical privity, that is, the entire estate goes from Bob to Carl, then Carl steps into Bob's shoes. Right? Think of it that way, right? Whatever burdens Bob had, Carl has. Carl is now Bob. And if Carl goes ahead and builds a factory, then Amy could sue Carl for damages for violating the covenant. Chance, go ahead.
In this scenario, Carl would not have fee simple because technically Amy has that promise, so she still has that one stick. Is that a fair statement?
Okay. Yeah, I didn't want to mention this, but you're actually exactly right. When we talk about fee simple, or maybe fee simple absolute, you think of the entire bundle of sticks, right? That's how you were taught. But it's commonly said you can have fee simple subject to a covenant, which is like, huh? Doesn't fee simple mean absolute? Yes, but that's how courts describe it. So Carl has a fee simple subject to the covenant. Does that make sense a little bit, Chance? Chance?
Yeah, it does, for better or worse.
Yeah, for better or worse. Terminology is not always great, but the word fee simple is not always used precisely by the courts. I think you're using it precisely, Chance, but that's not exactly how it's used. Okay, so again, for the burden to run from Bob to Carl, Bob must convey his entire estate. All right. Now, let's do the most complicated scenario. In what situation can Diane sue Carl for damages? Right? That's the most complicated one. When can Diane sue Carl for damages? So you need to look at both sides of the equation. First, how does the burden go from Bob to Carl? Well, you need both horizontal and vertical privity. I feel like I'm a priest here, right? You need horizontal and vertical privity. From Amy to Bob, you create the promise of the conveyance of the surveyed estate. And from Bob to Carl, you convey the entire interest. That's part one. Part two is you need some sort of privity between Amy and Diane. But that's not vertical privity. You don't need to convey the entire estate. So let's say that Amy has a fee simple, and Diane gets a life estate. That's enough. And then Diane can sue Carl for damages for building the factory. Right? This is the most complicated one where you have Diane suing Carl, right? Right? Instead of it going kind of on the diagonal, where Amy sues Carl, here it's horizontal, Diane sues Carl. It can get even more complicated because you don't just have 4 people, you might have 6 people or 12 people, right? It can go down multiple layers, right? But the most basic things you have to remember is the horizontal privity, that is there privity of estate? And is there vertical privity, that is, on the burden side, does the entire estate get transferred? These are the 2 things you have to think about. All right. There were a number of questions in the chat. And if you have a question, raise your hand. I'd be happy to call on you. But I'll try and read these questions in the chat. And I'll stop the screen sharing for a few moments. Blake says more review questions. Blake, I'll be happy to do that next week. You got it. I didn't finish all my questions today, which is why I'm adjourning the case. I think this is helpful. I probably, in hindsight, should have assigned 3 pages of reading for this entire class. You'd be like, how can you do an entire class with 3 pages of reading? But actually, I think that would have. I think that's what all we got to. We got to page 1, 3 pages of reading, if even that. Maybe actually about that page and a half we got to today. Nick, go ahead. I think your hand's up.
I think Jenny's was up before mine.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jenny, go ahead. I'm sorry. My apologies.
It's all good, thanks. I just wanted to recap for hopefully everyone's benefit.
Yeah, right. Mine too.
For the burden to run, you need both privities. For the benefit to run, you don't need either privity, just some interest.
That's right.
For a assignee to sue another assignee, you need both the burden and the benefit to run to each.
That's right.
Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Very good. I encourage you, I put the link for the Servitudes document. Give that a read. I was up till about 4 o'clock last night writing this, trying to get as tight as I can. I'm sure it's not perfect, and I'm happy to make revisions, but give that a good read later today if you get a moment. It's a very complicated topic. You got to think of covenants kind of like a cake with many layers, and you can't just look at one layer. You have to sort of see the entire cake. So it's tough to drill down to specifics without seeing the entire picture, which is why I tried to build this up incrementally. Right? You have the dominant and servient estates. You have horizontal privity / privy of estate. You have vertical privity where the entire estate is conveyed. There's just so many moving parts. And I haven't even mentioned equitable servitudes. We'll get to that next class. I think next semester I'm just going to make this if we're still on Zoom, a 3-page reading for the entire class. Okay, Nicholas, your hand's patiently waiting.
Yeah, so it's just kind of answering the question I asked. So if the benefit runs, but not the burden, then A is still bound, whereas C is not.
Correct. Right.
So if something that was mutual restriction, but then C is not bound by it, but A is, let's say decides to build an apartment complex.
Right.
A can't sue C, but would that act as a rescission of that mutual restriction? And then A could then subsequently build an apartment complex?
You say if they both breach?
Well, it's not really breach if the burden didn't pass to C. And if C is the first one to build an apartment complex.
Right.
Because he's not.
All right. Well, let me, and I see Elias, your hands up. I'll get to you in a second. Let me share my beloved screen again. I hate doing this, but unfortunately for this topic, you have to. Let's say in this scenario that Bob only gives Carl life estate. Okay, so there's no vertical privity. And then Carl goes ahead and builds a factory. Is Amy out of luck? No. Who does Amy sue? Amy sues Bob for damages because Bob's still bound by the covenant.
So, what I guess my question was based on was in question number, I think it was 8. It started, or 7. It started as them being neighboring landowners, not A selling to B any land.
It's a mutually restrictive covenant. I don't have time to answer this one now, but I'll try and do it next class. It'll take too long.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering with the lack of horizontal privity, how it would. Yeah, but that's fine. We can do it next time.
Yeah. Elias?
Yeah, real quick. I just wanted to ask about the notes that you posted were titled An Introduction to Servitudes.
Yeah.
My first question is, have you been doing that for every lecture? I've seen them on and off, but when I look at the syllabus and I look for like a link to go review them, it's hard to find. So I'm just wondering, how can we review these kind of?
What do you mean it's hard to find? There's a link in the syllabus to the case summaries and class notes.
I saw the class notes link. Is there a separate link?
If you go to the class notes folder, there's a folder called case summaries.
Oh, okay. I'll look again.
No. Let me just for everyone, right? So, oh God, Lord help us, screen share again, right? All right, I'll turn my screen share on so everyone sees it. All right, syllabus, right? Everyone see this? Where is it? So see over here, there's a section that says interaction. You see all this where it says interaction? Okay. At the bottom it says you can view all the class notes in this Google folder. Okay. You click Google folder. Okay, and you see all these class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4. There's a folder called case summaries. And they're all there sorted by class number. Elias, you see that?
Yes, thank you very much.
And then so at the bottom for class 13 is one called Servitudes. I try to upload these as quickly as I can. They're quite... They're time consuming. This one took me about 5 hours to write. It's not something that's done quickly because it's very hard to get it right. And I keep writing and then rewriting, and I was right until 4 o'clock last night. I was still working. You see 2:49 yesterday morning, so I was working on it pretty late. Up to 4 or something else. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. We're out of time. I'm going to start the minute poll now. I'm going to take a look at the chat because I think people have some questions. If you need to leave, that's fine. But I do want to try to answer the remaining questions in the chat. Okay. Yes. Good job, Jenny. Very good. Can someone answer question 9 in one sentence? His answer is yes, because, okay. Yeah, Jay, I'll come back to Certificate of Covenants next class. I can't rush that, but I think you're mostly right. Moises asks, again, mutually restrictive. Let me come back to that next class, okay? It's not on the exam if that's going to make you worried. That's not in the midterm. I didn't put a question upon that. But I do want to come back to the next class. All right. Anything else before we sign off? All right, everyone. Enjoy your break for the exam. I look forward to reviewing your papers. If you have any questions, please give me an email. I'll be back here around 12:30 for office hours. If this is not clicking, it's okay. It is a hard topic. But I think we did make good progress today. So thank you so much. Mm.